I hope you can hear me. I'm not using a little microphone, earphones or anything, but can we just discuss, and please correct anything that I say here, give me your opinion on anything that might be a diagnosis. But I just wanted to talk about the term that gets thrown around a lot on the internet, and particularly around, at the moment, around the Vallow case. And I'm not sort of saying, well, I think that's not a diagnosis and I don't think it's relevant, and I'm not saying what I think is a diagnosis or relevant. I just want to discuss the fact that there are plenty of people out there using the term sociopathy and saying, what we have here is a sociopath. Now, sociopath was a popular term when I was a very young child in the 70s, and it was thrown around then. And sociopathy and psychopathy, these are traits. So it's not a diagnostic term, and no therapist would actually use it to describe one of their patients' conditions as such. Like, they're not going to say, my patient is psychopathic. Possibly they may use the term sociopathic traits. It's often comorbid with other things, and that gets really interesting as well. But the diagnosis, and this is just according to DSM-5, and if you've listened to me rant about these things, you know also that I don't think DSM-5 is something that should define people's lives. It's a tool just like anything else to help you understand yourself and others. But the diagnosis would be ASPD, antisocial personality disorder. So something else I've noticed when people talk about antisocial personality disorder online is that they think that it means that people don't like to mingle or be around others or anything like that, and that's not what this condition is. It is a condition relating to people's relationships and to how they are interacting in the world, and it's a condition that sociopathic traits are probably something, I think, that arises from trauma and actual happenings, things that have happened to you, and probably more than one-off incidents, but probably things that have happened when you're a young person. Okay, so things that might be comorbid or more sort of maybe like anxiety and depression and things like that. Okay, so what did I write down here? I wanted to sort of try and list what is in the DSM, what a psychotherapist or someone might use to define psychopathy, and where sociopathy lies on this sort of spectrum of traits, and where, psychopathy and sociopathy, where do they meet, where do they divert? And then I thought I'd, as I go, just interject with, does that sound like Laurie, or does that sound like Laurie? Do you superficially think that is Laurie Vallow, but actually that's just something that she's doing as a tool, or, so Okay, so factor 1, psychopathy, and factor 2, psychopathy. That is actually more how these traits are described. So it's not like a mental illness, it's not like a disorder that you cure, or you can help cope in life, help people cope in life with these things if they want to, but not really. So factor 1, psychopathy, is primary psychopathy, and these are the traits that would relate to what people would traditionally discuss as a psychopath. Grandiosity. And it's something that would be called interpersonal affective. Okay, so you've got grandiosity, you've got all the pathological lying, very, very good liars, very glib, and it's just part of their world. No depth to their persona whatsoever. That shallowness that you hear in phone calls or conversations, anything that's been recorded at all of Laurie Vallow, before or after. I bet you can go and get anything, any interactions of her that's been filmed or recorded, going back years and years and years, and it's all very shallow. There is no depth. This is that superficial charm. They are con artists. So they are very, very good at convincing people that they need to do something for them. They are very good at getting people to do their dirty work. They're not specifically getting their hands dirty all the time. So very, very manipulative. Yes, I think we know who's manipulative. Very, how Laurie Vallow didn't really, she has had no emotion about her dead children that we can see, really, has she? Very callous, very unemotional, very lacking in empathy. There is no guilt, no remorse, and the planning and the plotting that she's done, it's very predatory, and it's very cold-blooded, but it's all going towards that goal, and that is a big part of factor 1 psychopathy, is the goal-orientated plotting. And I think Laurie was able to really manipulate people, really torture people, because she had one goal in mind, and that might be perhaps getting a good outcome from a divorce, or getting custody of children so that she could receive funds from the government to fund her lifestyle. It's a very specific type of planning and a type of goal orientation, and it is very different to factor 2. Aware of the consequences, aware that, shit can go down. But, Laurie has a lot of confidence. She had a lot of confidence that people would back her up, that she was going to get away with things. So this was a risk that Laurie took, isn't it? Consequences were not really anything that bothered her. She really probably had put in thought to the future and thought, well, I'm not going to get caught. I'm going to get away with this. Number 1, I've got support. Number 1, I'm just so brilliant. Number 2, I've gotten away with a whole lot of shit before. So I really think that she did consider she was going to have this just life of sun and sand and power, and just having a lifestyle where she's supported by others. And I'm not talking about the parasitic lifestyle of factor 2, and I can see how it's easily yeah, I can see how people think, well, she's parasitic and everything, but anyway. Okay. Yeah, very cold. It's not like the hot-blooded murder or the hot-blooded crime or the violent crime out of the blue, snapping. You know, it is that coldness committing that crime. And that lack of remorse, and it's that, yeah, egosyntonic. Like, I think Laurie knows how traits should appear. I mean, because she's able to try and put forward these fake expressions to people. If they're short, if they're in her life short term, or if there's enough breaks and when they see them, she can trick enough people. But she can't have the sustained contact with people because she can't maintain that mask. And she's aware, but she doesn't care. And it's kind of more a born thing. It's kind of is something that she's born with. And I believe that looking at the Cox family, we're looking at some Americana Gothic here. I think we're looking at some deep-rooted genetic breeding of dis-ease or of these type of human traits exhibiting in Laurie. I think you know, they're definitely clearly visible. And let's say, I mean, look at her father, look at the books that he was writing. Look at Janice. Anyway, so factor 2, what people might say is sociopathy, okay? And if you hear people saying, especially if they're a therapist or something, if they're saying, what a sociopath, then why would, it doesn't make sense that a therapist would talk like that, because that's not how you describe people. Okay, maybe they think they're using shorthand and that you're all too thick, but isn't there, you know, and it doesn't matter, and it's all just, you know, for the sake of, you know, just quickly relating to people that don't really know. No, I think it's really important to be specific and to teach, and I want to learn, and that's why I look into this, and this is why I get a little bit, you might say, triggered when these terms get thrown around, because it feels lazy, misleading, hysterical and things like that. So factor 2, secondary psychopathy, and it's more of the social deviance. It's more coming out of this emotional pain and acting on emotional pain, and it might be that violent snapping, those violent crimes that you actually get caught for and put away for, and you come back out and you commit them again. With factor 1 psychopathy, and this is interesting with regards to Laurie Vallow as well, lesser charges are common apparently. You know, they've committed a heinous crime, but the perpetrators, the psychopath, actually just gets put in prison for a lesser crime, for lesser amount of years than they really should get, and then they're out. And that's a gift of the psychopath. That's part of their manipulation. It's part of their masking and everything like that. But with the sociopath here, perhaps they're more likely to be a rapist or commit domestic violence. I actually think, you know, if you're going to use these terms loosely and just descriptively, very basically for people, that would be more like your Letitia Stokes, your Letitia Hardens, I should say. And something I find interesting about Letitia Stokes, Letitia Harden, and Laurie Vallow, Cox Daybell, is the daughter relationship, because often when the children of narcissists are coming into those teen years and things, this is where that placating, where I had better make that loving video. I've got to stroke that ego. That is that stage around those ages of those teenage years, early teenage, mid-teenage years, where there is that love bombing back from the child, you know, those open expressions of adoration for the narcissistic parent. Both Harley Hardin and Tylee Ryan, sadly, you can see they're both doing the same thing. Yeah, the Mother's Day messages and things like that. It's actually quite chilling to see the similarities, but I think that's coming from the narcissistic traits within the parents. So it's an effective thing. There is the defensiveness, there is the hot-bloodedness, it's that the poor control, the poor impulse, doing things out of boredom rather than planning, and the type of emotional arousal is a bit different. I mean, Laurie is actually very, very cold, and the way she can just sit tight through a crisis is very specific, don't you think? I do anyway. And I do think it's different to this factor too. So the other thing I was wanting to look at, okay, so, sorry, antisocial personality disorder, cluster B, you've got your cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. It's coming in DSM-5 as the cluster B group, where you're violating social norms. There's the deceit, the disregard of safety of others. It's behavioural. It's this, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know that Laurie could be seen to be parasitic and all of these things, but to me, it's not sitting neatly enough. It's not sitting quite right. And I think whatever is going on with her is very complicated anyway. If you've seen my other videos, I actually feel like there's dark triad traits with the psychopathy, the type of psychopathy, that it's slightly different again within dark triad or triad. The narcissistic, or the grandiose narcissism, and the Machiavellianism. But anywho, so then let's look at psychopathy with narcissistic traits. And what have you got? Well, narcissism, perhaps you're wanting that, you know, that attention, that perhaps your goal setting and your planning is for fame. Well, I don't think Laurie wanted to be famous as such, not for being a murderess. I mean, she probably wanted the power of being able to manipulate people, have them listen to her, eventually maybe have them tithe, have them believe her, in so much as being a goddess, having some sort of special power and special place in the world. But really, I mean, with the narcissism, pure narcissism, you might be wanting to be famous and have glory and be seen as the, you know, just such a special person, just someone to be really adored and admired. And the psychopathy, that goal setting and that planning is for a different type of success. It is for the things that we know Laurie values above all else. She values it above her children, you know, and that is wealth, and that is power, the ability to have material items, gifted, given, gained, however she does it, you know. So the murdery bit coming in here, you know, isn't this interesting? Because you know, she was attaining her material wealth and having her needs met through these very manipulative ways, you know, through all this legal hell, through throwing abuse accusations around, you know, and then what's been introduced to an already very unstable, nasty person is another way, this light, this dark, and murder has come into it, and serial murder by the looks at that, allegedly. We're all just speculating, aren't we? It's very, very interesting where the Chadists, the gathered, the cult of the gathered comes into it. I've spoken before, or rather I might have mentioned in my posts about, you know, this really is a patriarchy, you know, because we do see Melanie Gibb leaving her family behind for someone who, you know, both of these people were married, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick, but they've split and hooked up. And Melanie isn't bringing up her children, or she hasn't brought them with her, not even her autistic children, who might appreciate a little bit of consistency. And in fact, the allegations are by Pryor that Melanie has, by the cops actually, that Melanie might have used her autistic child to lie and to perjure themselves if they are brought to court. She could very well have told her autistic child what to say about her having the JJ and Tyler, etc. You know, the Chad still has all the Chadlets, and Laurie, 2 of her children are dead, and Melanie Bujo Pulowski, well, she's not with her children. 2 of them are apparently dark. Isn't that horrific? And she's left her children. I'm not sure. I know now that Ian won't be getting probably contact with his children. His ex-wife certainly seems to be onto things. But, you know, there is this pattern, this patriarchal pattern. So even though it might seem like the women in this group seem to have power, they're gatherers, or they're special, they're a goddess, this is a gift given to them. These visions are taught to them and through them. They're not coming from them. They're coming from men. Another thing I want to clear up actually while I've spoken about David Warwick is, this is the internet for you, isn't it? Oh, David Warwick, for a time he even was spreading far and wide into Australia, you know. No, this is a completely different Warwick. We've got a David Warwick here. Yes, he does talk about spirituality. He's easily found. He's easily not this fucking drip that is David Warwick of the USA, of Melanie Phibbs, you know, little partner there. David Warwick, though, in America, he has been around cults, groups, preppers for many, 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 many years. And he's been gathering into Rexburg just like the Chad has. This is getting very rambly and weird, and I don't know if anyone's going to listen all the way through. And I always say at the end when it's too late, listen at 2.0. Yeah, the Chadlets. Very interesting, isn't it? You know, I think Emma's going to start having visions. I don't trust the sons. I mean, who knows? I mean, isn't it cruel to say they've lost both parents in a way? Their mother was most likely murdered, and their father is in jail. But God, they creep me out. They're really creepy. And they're alive. I mean, I know they're adults, but just something to think about. You know, before you go through, you know, a sociopathic narcissist and this, that, the other. Really? Really, do you think? I mean, number one, you just wouldn't be using the term sociopath, so please don't. If you think it's shorthand or something, maybe just explain it, and maybe explain the exact traits and why. I mean, I'd love to go through with you, but it would take bloody hours. Let's go through and see where I think Laurie sits as a sociopath or a psychopath. And it would be, I'm over here. And actually I'm sitting in the pocket of, there is something actually very specific going on with Laurie, other than her just being a complete an absolute disgusting nightmare of a person, a woman whom I know you're going to look in those eyes, aren't you? They are cold. Yeah. You know, but I think there's something very, very specific going on, apart from she's just a very nasty, selfish, grubby, awful person, apart from having narcissistic traits, and apart from having traits that might put her into a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I'm probably not going to speak anymore on it, but I haven't made like a Chad video or the Gathered video or anything for quite a long time. Yeah. Got a lot of thoughts on it, but I don't know. I'm just actually waiting to see if there's any news about anything happening with Melanie Boudreau-Pawlowski, any charges being laid. I think you know how I feel about Melanie Gibb and David Warwick and where they sit with things, where my suspicions lie. On whatever scale that they are on, from 1 to 10 of culpability to heinous, I think it starts with guilty knowledge. I think it possibly as well, I just think, how can we possibly even think that it's something like, well, they saw something but they didn't act, or they, you know, it's guilty knowledge for too long. Melanie Gibb is in the frame for way too many occurrences, and her boyfriend has been her boyfriend for this time, and she's just way too involved to have less than guilty knowledge. Just in my opinion. I will leave it there. 28 minutes and 30 something seconds. Thanks for listening. I do appreciate it when you give me feedback. As some of you may have noticed, the only thing I really don't like is when you put words into my mouth that didn't actually come out of my mouth. So do me the courtesy of listening. You can say whatever you want, but if you tell me I said something that is completely not true, the opposite of what I've said, this has happened a few times, I'm going to shoot you down for it. But other than that, thank you for listening. This is a interactive channel. That's why I do it. I'm a viewer who makes videos. I think that's pretty clear, because I watch a lot of videos and I comment and I participate on other people's channels. That is what a viewer does. I'm simply a viewer that makes videos because I wanted to have my say. I encourage anyone, if you've got something to say, make a video about it and put it out there, because some of you seem to have a lot to say, but you don't make videos and yet you act as if you do, or you act as if you yeah, you like to really you've got a lot to say, just like I have, and you like to say it all over everyone else's channels, and which is great. People love the interaction, but I feel like some of you need to just put your money where your mouth is, okay? Because you're going to find there's more and more channels that are just blocking you out. I don't want to do that to anybody. I actually encourage you, some of you, why not just make a little video about your views if you're so annoyed by and triggered by and angered by other people's. But anyway, yeah, I'm just blown away. I've got that 400 people have subscribed to me. I think it's pretty amazing. I had 50 people before I started making videos even, because I'm a viewer and because I was interactive on other channels, usually carnivore channels and things like that, but started to be more so around 2 years ago. Yeah. We're at the university. We're at the anniversary now of 2 years since the murder of Bella, Cece, Nico and Shanann. And that's when I started getting really active on other people's channels in true crime. So I actually had 50 subscribers before I made my first video at the start of the year. And I made my first video about health. It was about carnivore. But obviously I've been getting into true crime as well as what I call true life. I'm really blown away. I'm really thankful and grateful because I love the interaction, and I know people come and go. I know I upset people sometimes. You know, they unsubscribe, and that's okay. Come in for a little while, come for the long term. Some of you might be really surprised at some of the type of content that I've got on my channel. So have a good look around. I've got playlists, like I've got lots of playlists on many different things. Yeah, so have a look around, and I look forward to chatting with you. And oh my gosh, it's 33 minutes.